We have great new landmarks. Many of these were competitions, and you could decide how to have competitions for the whole site just to get a broader range of views and ideas here. As you get down and you advance, you could get into specific elements here. So this is our cloud gate, or the bean as everybody calls it. Kind of a one-of-a-kind fountain, the Crown Fountain, which is wonderful. It's a little shallow pool of water that really attracts children, and all the faces are filmed faces that are active, kind of TV screens of Chicagoans. Oh, it's so wonderful to be downtown. Every about 15 minutes, these mouths sprout water, and the kids all know it's coming. They gather there, and it spits out, and you just hear the eruption of kids' laughter and screaming. It's really brought a level of animation to downtown, and certainly has a wonderful sculptural quality when the last thing you want to do is be out in the park. And just a couple more slides here. And so this is the Lurie Garden by Catherine Gustafson. And this is another thing that really caught us off guard we didn't see. So this was the idea, is maybe there would be a quiet corner on the side of the park that wasn't so active about music and events, a place where you could go and enjoy nature. And within a year, and we planted it with all native species and provided that, within a year we started to see rabbits and birds and butterflies and insects this area of the city had not seen in 100 years. And it actually got us to thinking about a completely new planting approach to our parkways and along our streets in the city. And it's just been wonderful that you have this and water as part of the park as well. We have places for kind of outdoor dining in the summer that turn into ice rinks in the winter. We have areas for temporary art so that there's always something new to see in this public space when you visit. And although slightly ironic, this is the McDonald's, as in the hamburger bike and fitness center. But this is a great feature as well, because this is a place where commuters can come in. You go in, they have showers. You can actually, ride your bike into work, get ready, go to work. They fix the bikes, and it's really added a layer of activity to the park as well. So Millennium Park on the top there, and then we've just kind of grown and added to that. So more of a children's-focused park, this area that you see in the lower portion of the screen, Maggie Daly Park. So again, more of a children's play focus to grow this park system. And of course, you have to have a Frank Gehry Bridge to link both sides. So I'm very intrigued on how your site actually connects across the street to get over to the ocean. I wonder how that power line corridor, how that can actually lead you out to the ocean. I wonder how it interacts with your cycle track that's there. I think just such rich opportunity here to not only look at a park feature, but to think about how that can be active day and night, what kinds of development are right around the edges, really frame a great public room and space to bring back that wetland and that heritage and history that's unique. And don't do a copy and paste from any place, even if it's cool, like Millennium Park. Really have a conversation about what's right here and authentic, and why how you would invite folks from outside of the city to come learn and see what's unique to this part of the world. Okay, now nobody go away from here saying the mayor's proposing to do a $500 million anything. Okay, but I did want to talk cost because it's important. So I guess the big takeaway here was just this major participation from the private sector once they had something to believe in and to participate in. The public side there, we were so Chicago on that. We have $150 million. We don't have any idea where it went. We have 2 or 3 people in jail for bribery. I mean, we did it really good, So that number's a bit inflated, but we did the base bill. We had a garage. We had a commuter rail piece on there, so it turned into a big number. But wow, not a bit of this was, asked for. It all came forward and really made the difference. So I'm just certain once you get started here, the possibilities are endless. But here's the punchline and why I kind of went through that. Within 10 years, you start to see the annual levels of spending in the billions of dollars. The new jobs that this has created is tremendous. And although I don't know that adding a lot of residential here is right, you guys are pretty tight-knit, but we really needed it because we had been through a period where folks had left the downtown area of the city. So investment in this park has given us a focus. It's really grown the number of residential units downtown, And again, the value in taxes that support the important work that we need to do across the city is significant. So hopefully there's some things of interest there. I look forward to kind of follow up on Q&A. And most of all, this was our opening celebration night here. I can't wait to see what you do here and look forward to your celebration. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, Redondo Beach is not Chicago, but I think you get the flavor that they're all dealing with the exact same things, right? The types of open space they're looking at, how they get to it, what type of public-private partnership they enter into, and how the community can guide what happens here. So next up, we have Ben Feldman, principal with Studio MLA Architects downtown. It's a more local firm. It's a 40-person firm that includes landscape architects, urban designers, community advocates, botanists, ecologists, and technical experts. Diversity and multiple perspectives add depth and meaning to the collaborative process, allowing them to bring design and implementation expertise to a variety of projects, from park master planning to intimate plazas and gardens. Ben is a landscape architect and urban designer with 20 years experience who integrates ecologically sound, system-based thinking into his work. As a principal at Studio MLA, he spearheads many of the firm's public realm-oriented projects and provides oversight and leadership on design and planning in the studio. Striving for resilient communities and urban regeneration, he seeks solutions with environmental synergies between built social and natural spheres. Ben received his Master of Urban Design from University of California, Berkeley, Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo. He's here on his own time and on his own interests, so let's give him a big round of applause. We got to mention your projects.
Thank you. Let's make sure the mic is on. Oh, it's on. All right, great. All right. So, seems to be working. Thank you all for coming. I know everybody has a busy schedule. I got my 2 daughters back at home, but it's really important to have this ability to share, I think, some ideas and what a vision really means to you all, and you all should have your own unique ideas. I think the work that was just shared was really extraordinary, and that, I think you need that ability to kind of look beyond in terms of what other people are doing, but then look within to really understand what this place means to you all in Redondo Beach. So thank you, Mayor Brand, for just reaching out to us. I'm going to share a little bit, or a lot of it, on one particular project and an experience that's, it's not a finished project. We aspire to be Millennium Park, but sometimes things take a little bit longer than you expect. And I think the most important thing is to have a real champion amongst you all to make sure that the vision isn't lost and that you retain that vision no matter what. We had a chance to talk with Mayor Brand, our president, Mia Lair, who founded the company, and I came down and took a look at the site, and this idea of peering through this chain link fence to what is the future was really intriguing, and hearing a little bit about what is happening on the site today in the sense of nature reemerging. So you have water creeping into this site, no matter whether somebody thinks it's a wetland or not, there's something happening here, right? So this sense of nature lost and these industrial sites is something that's coming up more and more. And so peering over, of course, the storage shed, this facility here, it's that sense of these backdoor conditions that these cities have made. And as you can tell, I'm California sort of rooted in my studies and education, but I'm also grew up at the coast in Santa Barbara and had the fortune to be living within earshot of the sound of the waves breaking. And so when I talked to Mayor Brown and said, why do you need a park? You got the beach. This is it. Like, this is all you need. And I'm sure many of you came here just because there is the coast. There is that beach, the one-of-a-kind Pacific Ocean. But what a park could do in relationship with the ocean is an extraordinary idea and feature. We are an office actually just down the street here in the industrial corridor of downtown Los Angeles. Back in the day, I was working out of San Francisco and got a call from, at the time, working for another firm, an urban design firm called Perkins & Will, and they said they had an opportunity for me to come down and look at this site. This site is called the Piggyback Yard. It's an active intermodal freight yard that, let me go back one moment, is 125 acres sitting right in downtown. I keep doing that. So trying to get the laser, here we go. It keeps jumping around. So anyways, downtown, I think you can make out Dodger Stadium. Well, it's really sensitive. Dodger Stadium to your upper left. And what you're not seeing in that picture is any sort of nature, right? But this man, who's one of the most amazing people I've come across professionally, his name is Lewis McAdams. He founded the Friends of the LA River over 30 years ago, and the first 20 years of his career was just going around to people in Los Angeles saying, yes, there is a river in Los Angeles, and it's right there. The last 10 years have been really instrumental, and we've got a lot of ground support to do small projects around the river. He came to us and said, I've got a project for you. What can you do to help me? And along the way, we began to realize that the Los Angeles River has had a long way to go. They put up these signs just to let people know when you're driving 40 miles across the bridges that there's a river underneath you. And you forget that, and you lose sense of it because of all the concrete. And it's not easy, to kind of see it when you're on the ground, but when there is a rain event, this is sort of why it's there, right? So we're building out this massive channel out of concrete, which was at the time the biggest project in the 1940s from a WPA-era project to dump all this concrete and, per the Army Corps' design, move water as quickly and efficiently from the mountains to the sea as possible. Now that paradigm has changed. We know we can do it in other ways, and we shouldn't need to see it more commonly like this. And I don't know if you've been in the river, but it's an amazing experience. Most of the time you might see it like this, but that's maybe another era altogether. We do spend a lot of time looking at history. There's a lot of things we can learn. Before it was full of concrete, it was actually this dry stream bed, and that's very common in the Southern California rivers. There's not always water in it, and sometimes it's running underground. But what does that mean from a history? This photo is indicative of what LA looked like in that time, and you can see the river running up to the right here. And the important thing that's telling us about this is that the river and the rail were always having a relationship together. And that's important for us in this site because in this image here, I'll zoom in, it was this fallow land that was seemingly wet, and we were able to tell that water probably pushed through here, but the rails all came to its edges. And taking the path of least resistance, running kind of very shallow grade, we're basically knitting Los Angeles with the rail industry, with the river. And this is really hard to undo. But there does come a time, and this is a type of academic bit of jargon called drawscape, but this is what we do as professionals, is look for these opportunities to suss out what is becoming undone by industry. What are these things that no longer function in our current state of technology and moving away from that? And this is an aerial shot of what the Piggyback Yard looks like. Again, it's right across from downtown. Just across from the other bank is Union Station. What are those opportunities there? What we can do to not only think about putting in a park, but what could it and should it be? Of course, the LA River has a master plan that was developed in 2006, and in that master plan, it looked at the entirety of the watershed. What's important about that is that it's not just about the water, it's not just about that lineal line, but it's about the neighborhoods and all that land that connects into the river. And when you think about streets and street trees, as well as the smaller tributaries, you begin to develop this quite extensive network and tapping into it. So it's also very important to set a certain amount of goals that help you identify what you're really trying to get to. So this is about creating a continuous river greenway, about connecting the neighborhoods, extending open space and the water quality, as well as enhancing the river's identity. And then finally, as you just saw, how do we incorporate public art and other amenities into this space and idea? Now, of course, when you start any project, you begin to think, how big is big? So 125 acres is the same outline over these different spaces. And here's that Millennium Park project that we just saw. So in this case, we could have fit a couple Millennium Parks in there easily. And also just understanding what the importance means when you build up this urbanism and this fabric right around its edges, like you might have in Central Park. Of course, it's almost the size of LAX, which is quite amazing. Another relevant project would be the Hudson Yards in New York, which is just about to finish up. So at the end of the day, Lewis McAdams, the founder of Friends of the LA River, just simply said, create an image for me. Tell me what you could do here. And so we gave it a lot of thought, and this was a pro bono project where we just all came together as a series of professionals, included 4 different offices, and began to meet with various people from the city. Ask them, what does this mean to them? What do we need to know technically? What do we need to know? Asking the community members, how do we better connect and make a more accessible space? And we didn't just give an image, we really took it to heart in terms of what are those opportunities. And this is fundamentally starting with the movement of the river itself. So on the image to the left, it's about a broadened river. What does it mean to kind of improve the habitat? How do we move water in an interesting way? Versus the river strand on the right is more about how do we manage the water flow and potentially hold it in place and do something special with it, save it for the long term. And so we ended up coming up with these 2 master plans. One was the broadened river that you just saw, as well as the river strand. We also developed and layered in this idea of a framework. So it's not just about water, it's also about open space. How do we better connect not only streets, but also public transportation, bikeways, trails, things that are more informal, and then finally layer in that important sense of community and development opportunities. And some of the images that came out of that experience and what it could be like to walk along a series of wetlands or create play fields, a new museum amenity. Also being in the river, understanding how to create paths along and in and around the railway. And then finally, when that flood does come, you can begin to see the potential impact in terms of creating that storage space. How do we do that in a way where we come back and you appreciate how it can connect into this bigger system? So this is that network of spaces around it, so it's not always about this site. What was amazing about this experience is that we were just doing something for this fellow to help support his cause in the Friends of LA River. We didn't really think we would sort of end up with a park. We didn't really have many expectations, but we just wanted to help him get the word out. The city took all that work and they gave it to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And we thought, well, they'll probably have a couple questions, but just kind of burn it or put it aside. But instead, they incorporated it into their report about how the river can change. And you see that blip there at the bottom of the page. That is the largest singular site that they're looking to incorporate into their study and the future planning of this river. So their ideas were, a little bit different than ours. This is the current site again. This is sort of what they were proposing to do. This is what it is without that development. Now, I sort of wonder what that experience might be with the industrial fringe around you and how safe you might feel. But there's that point at which development and having a little bit of a light, on at night kind of feels a little bit safer, a little bit more honest. I studied this plan, obviously, through the night and through the days, and I saw this funny figure that they incorporated into the planning page and diagrammatically what they're showing, and I said, wow, that looks really familiar, and it seems like they kind of borrowed what we were planning. So that was a big compliment. They didn't send me any thank you letters or anything, but we ended up getting hired on to do another study, a feasibility study. So that we did a good job. We kind of showed an idea of what you could do, but we felt like we could do it better. So we looked at those two first master plans and then came up with a third idea of treating the water. Instead of holding it all together or just leaving it open, we decided to create a managed approach and come forward with the idea about islands. And so these islands allow water to move through the wetland, push through, and have a flow that's needed so you don't have stagnant water, but it also allows for this larger capacity to take place. What we're seeing are a pair of diagrams that the engineers we brought on board began to study and show what that stress might look like on a 50-year storm event level, basically proving that this concept actually works. The Army Corps does not study this. One thing to point out, and I learned along the way, is we're working in 3D models, and this is a 3D engineering computational fluid dynamic modeler. So that's working with a full volume of space. The Army Corps still works with a 1D engineering method to do their tests. Just something to say about where the Army Corps is and where they should be. So we felt fairly comfortable and began to kind of show these diagrams. We also looked beyond to understand what the capacity would be for this site to actually work as a liver to help clean up all those stormwater contaminants coming out of the adjacent properties before they enter the river, and developed an idea about connecting as a series of developments to the local artists that are just north of the site and the brewery, if you happen to see that space, or USC's medical campus, and create a small unit for their conferences, hosting academic facilities for the housing, workforce housing coming into Mission, and then across the river would be the transit district behind Union Station. We ended up building this model, concluding with a report, and basically seeing this vision play out into the future and connecting with what is the state parks land, state parks just below Dodger Stadium, which is now complete, and seeing this into the big picture of how this space really makes a huge difference at the end of the day. I got this personal email from Mayor Garcetti telling me that we're just very close to the decision to tell the Army Corps back in the day in 2013. And then a few months later, the announcement passed that $1 billion would be approved towards the LA River. And so the mayor thanked everybody for pulling the line, and that money was there. This project was on the part of many different offices, Perkins & Will, Mia Lair, technical advisors from the city of Los Angeles, engineering firms, and many contributors and people that were engaged on the project from their own right. We've continued to do more studies on the LA River. Again, our office is actually just upstream from this, and the city of LA said, well, the master plan is reaching its 10 years. What would you do today, knowing everything that you do? And what could those possibilities be? And similarly, interested in getting people down into the river and making those connections underneath the rail. How can those two things live together? That is the historic Sears site up in LA, and looking at ways to use some of the remnant properties to support the redevelopment of that project. And this is one option, but we also looked at a second option that would create a type of solar type of technology to create a shade canopy above a promenade that would elevate above the tracks and connect in and around the site. And this is actually A more recent project that we're working with a Danish architecture firm about creating not only what would be much needed housing in Los Angeles, but also how to create connections over the rail into the river, as well as create public amenities, open promenade decks, as well as a type of sculpture garden and other cultural community amenities. So we're just excited to hear what's your vision, and I think I'm going to turn it right over to Mayor Brand. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. That's great. Yeah. Well, there's a project, and I think you'll see it consistent with all these projects, is they start with no money. They start with one or two people or a group of people who have a vision, see something different, and those people stick with it. 20 years of just identifying the river for people. Look what it became. Really, really inspiring. Anyway, our next guest has actually been working with the city a lot for about the last 10 years. It's Larry Cosmont. He's president and CEO of Cosmont Corporation, Cosmont Companies, which he founded in 1986. Cosmont Companies is an industry leader in public-private real estate transactions and economic development. In 2015, he launched Cosmont Transaction Services, which sources financing for public-private projects, P3 initiatives, and infrastructure funding. You'll hear the term P3 a lot, and that just means public-private partnerships. Mr. Cosmont served as interim city administrator for the city of Montebello, May 2011 to 2012, as part of a financial turnaround assignment awarded to Cosmont Companies. From 1975 to 1986, Mr. Cosmont served as city manager, director of community development, and redevelopment director in the cities of Santa Monica, Seal Beach, Bell Gardens, and Burbank. Mr. Cosmont holds a Master's of Public Administration degree from USC, a BA in Political Science from the State University of New York, Binghamton. As I said, Larry's been with the city for about 10 years now, and he basically knows everybody in the LA County region, and everybody knows him. So we're really lucky to have him. So welcome, Larry Cosmont.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks. Wow, it's so exciting to be here. I'm really, as a professional that works solely on what we call public-private transactions, there is nothing more exciting than be at the front end of the kinds of projects that Richard and Ben are talking about. These are hard-fought, long-term endeavors. So as you stand here, you sit here tonight, and thank you, Mayor Bill Brand, for convening this. The city of Redondo Beach has just an awe-inspiring opportunity to change the character of their waterfront. And the interesting thing about this is you start, I think, from the consummate position of strength. As we've said, there's a public vote required to help a developer and to help us figure out what we really want. Now, here's the thing. We have to figure out what we want. And that becomes an important part of the journey that we're about to take. Now, you've seen two great architects, know both firms quite well, take you through the pathway of design and discussion. And there's a collateral pathway that goes with that, which is what really Cosmont is involved in with many, many communities up and down the state. We've been doing this for 32 years. And the elements of public-private projects are much different than when you and I go buy a house or buy a commercial piece of property or buy a building and revitalize it. No. This is nothing like that. First of all, you're in coastal California. That puts you in a different nation in terms of land use, right? I always say there's two Californians. There's sort of east, and then there's the coast. And the coast, land use in the coast, is a full tilt battle for entitlements. We know that. We know that here. We know that in Northern California and Southern California. Why? Because people really want to demand the absolute best that they can get out of private investment to make sure that their community benefits from it in multitudinal ways. It's important to get it right. It's important to have the conversation. It's important that we understand design. It's also important that we understand economics. A bit of these slides talk about economics because at the end of the day, a buyer is going to appear. They're going to control the property. In many cases, in many of the projects we work on, these are public spaces, public properties. not here. We may think as a community that we actually own the AES site, but we don't. We can manage the transition to a different use, which is certainly a long time in coming. But it is still a process that requires a public sector set of inputs and funds and a private sector set of inputs and funds. And so basically where we are is we're saying, just as the great case studies that we've seen, the AES revitalization is truly an opportunity to use the advent of a large coastal regional park as a driver of image, attraction, and land value. So what does that mean? It means that much as both Richard and Ben showed, the end product of great projects become the image of a community. They become the personality. They become